Have you ever felt like you're too much at work or not quite right? And if people really saw how your brain works, you might be judged, sidelined, or even seen as a burden. Then today's conversation is for you. I'm joined by Tina Squire, an ADHD coach who specialises in supporting people in the workplace. Tina brings together lived experience with a strong corporate and HR background, so she truly understands both the human side of ADHD and the realities of organisational life. In this episode, we talk about the shame that so many neurodivergent people carry at work, the exhausting effort of trying to fit into systems that weren't designed for our brains, and the quiet fear of asking for support. But we also talk about something really powerful, that ADHD comes with incredible strengths, creativity, insight, energy, and problem solving. And when workplaces are willing to understand and accommodate neurodiverse needs, it's not just the individual who benefits, the whole organisation does. This is a conversation about letting go of shame, recognising your value, and reimagining what work could look like if people were supported to thrive just as they are. So let's dive in. This is my conversation with Tina Squire. Hi Tina, thank you so much for coming and joining me on my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, I'm so excited. A, to see you, and B, I just love talking about this stuff, so can't wait to get going.
So for anyone that doesn't know you, could you explain a little bit about what you do and how you help neurodivergent adults?
So I am a neurodivergent coach, so I work with ADHDers and ADHDers, but I come from a corporate background. So I've done sort of 20 years in corporates in all sorts of areas of sales, HR and recruitment, operations. I've employed a lot of people. I've therefore managed a lot of people. And when I got diagnosed in my 40s, it was about 6 years ago now, I started doing this work. It was just quite natural for me to work with people who are kind of in the workplace or adjacent to the workplace, or they're self-employed, because it's an environment that I understand. And I never kind of wanted to leave corporate. I do meet a lot of people who don't like that environment and they want to get out of it. But for me, it was more that I found my passion, and I've kind of brought that environment into what I'm doing. So to that end as well, I am also a certified DEI practitioner, so diversity, equity and inclusion as a whole.
You might need to say that a little bit slower.
Yeah, yeah. I say DEI because like everyone knows what it means, but everyone doesn't. And also it has a lot of names. So DEI stands for diversity, equity and inclusion. Some call it EDI, same words, different order. And nowadays it's also often just called inclusion, and other people will have other names for it. It's just corporate jargon. But it's that whole inclusion bit within organisations normally. That
I didn't
sort of
know that about you. So yeah, I've learned something already.
Yeah, that's where I like to operate.
What does that kind of entail then? What that role?
So I do, obviously in neurodiversity coaching, like I work with individuals, and the profile tends to be that they are part of the workplace in some way. But then I also love doing the work with organisations, because what's so great about it is that you tend to reach more people in one go. So I might do talks for employee resource groups. It also has an acronym of ERGs. Or I will go and train people leaders on how to better manage their people when it comes to neurodiversity. But I mean, I say that knowing that it's essentially training that just helps you manage your people better, lets everybody work in a better way, really. It's just kind of taking that aspect into it. So yeah, and I do awareness talks. It might be Neurodiversity Month, and lots of organisations want a little awareness talk. I also do facilitated conversations, which is a fancy word for saying that there is a conflict maybe between a few people, or they're not communicating very well between each other, and within that there is some neurodiversity. So therefore I'm quite well suited to that, especially having a bit of HR background as well. So
Yeah.
I think I've thought of everything.
So it's primarily a lot to do with the workplace by the sound of it.
I like to operate there.
Yeah. That's your like zone of genius by the sound of it. That's kind of...
I like to think so, yeah. I thrive there. I enjoy it, yeah.
Hello, I am just going to pop in here and let you know about my group coaching program, which is called The Academy. The Academy is an inspiring and supportive space where I coach like-minded ADHDers. We explore everything about living with ADHD, and you will receive personal coaching and support directly from me. I've been through the challenges of ADHD myself, and I love sharing the lessons that I've learned to help make your life easier. So I'd love for you to come and join our amazing ADHD community and learn and grow together. There's a link down below to join, and I hope to see you soon. Well, I just wanted to go back a little bit, just in your own journey, because we've known each other since we both trained as ADHD coaches, which was a while ago.
Yeah.
And we're friends, which is lovely. So we've seen each other kind of growing on our own coaching journey as coaches, but also as friends.
Yeah.
So we've kind of, been there together.
Yeah.
But I don't really know that much about where when you kind of found your own struggle, say, back in the workplace before I knew you. So I was wondering if you could kind of explain a bit, what did it look like for you being neurodivergent? So in the workplace before you even really knew about that.
Yeah. I always kind of think, well, how far do I go back? Because I did not, education-wise, I'm going that far back apparently. Education-wise, I didn't necessarily, I wasn't very academic. I did school okay, but I did a lot of singing and music, and because I chose that, a lot of the academics got sort of replaced with that. So I always sort of say, before I became a certified in what I do now and accredited in what I do now, the only thing I was trained to do was sing, really. So I took a very practical, non-academic route to the workplace. But then, as anyone in the creative industries knows, you need a job normally to kind of support that. And I ended up in a call center, where a lot of us end up as well, if you're an actor or singer or whatnot. And it was a great buzzy environment that I really enjoyed. The work was a little bit monotonous, so I sort of became a manager very quickly. And I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed learning about business. And when you're working in call centers, you often work with lots of different clients and different people, and it becomes a challenge of kind of how to manage people. So I'm going to steer myself back to the question you actually asked about my own workplace journey, right? In the beginning, it was fairly straightforward. In hindsight, actually, because I'm not going to paint this as some sort of sob story, if I'm honest, because it was all working pretty well for me. And
there's probably a reason for that, though, isn't there? Which we will get to later, I'm sure, why that was working.
Well, I was going to say a little bit now. What I can see in hindsight is that I was probably lucky. I mostly worked with people who wanted to see me for what I was good at, right? They were sort of, oh, you're good at this. You should do this, or you should run this campaign, or you should have this role. It was much less of that kind of, we have this role, it has this job description, this box that you need to fit into. I had very little of that throughout the 20 years in corporate.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I liked. I liked that about contact centers as well, because it felt like it was quite fluid and you could try lots of little things. It's got its own little environment, it feels like. So hence when I say, I've done recruitment and HR and operations and sales, it's all very, very true. But it's an environment where you can sort of try all of that.
I mean, it does sound like the perfect kind of environment for an ADHD adult, really, that you're able to try all these different things. It's keeping that novelty factor and the excitement and the interest piece.
Yeah. I think what I see with myself and what I see with my clients now as well is that as you progress, it gets a little bit harder, and what we tend to do is we work harder. So might stay up really late at night or working lots of hours outside of work, and I did all of that, and that was hard. It felt like that was just what I needed to do in order to be where everybody else was, or achieve what everybody else was, or produce what everybody else was doing. And that was the struggle for sure. I mean, when I was in it, I just did it for better or for worse. But yeah, the hindsight is kind of great, and obviously coming out of it, not feeling like, because where I'm now is so different, right? I know what I need, and I will give myself those accommodations in my own work, as self-employed and kind of doing all the work I do now. But even when I go back into those corporate environments as well, I can feel the sort of urge of masking and wanting to fit in, but I resist it very strongly, and I ask for what I need,
Well, that's a really good next thing to talk about, I think, is this word masking.
Yeah.
What can you explain a bit more about that? You feel this urge to mask. Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah. So, masking gets used very well. It gets banded a lot around a lot in what we do, I think. But probably for good reason as well, because it does cover a multitude of things. It's just where you feel the need to behave in a way that might not suit you, but you can see that that's how everybody else behaves, and that's how to fit in, essentially.
Yeah.
And whether it's socially, that's everybody has the same, I don't know, political beliefs, or whether it's in a work environment whereby everybody works till 7 o'clock every night just to show that they are a good worker. And that definitely used to be maybe more in the 90s. I like to think that it's a little bit more boundaried now, but it's like a lot of those sort of unspoken rules as well that happens in a workplace where, you might, and I see this with clients all the time when they start new jobs. It's like they're saying that everybody just works 9 to 5, using that example still. But do they really? Do they actually go home at 5? Is it safe for me to go home at 5? Or is everybody just working beyond that just to look like they're doing, like they're really good at what they do? Masking. What else is masking? Going on, like I said as well, if I were to do a presentation when I was in corporate, I was always last minute, which, I was quite senior. I was very senior when I left, which meant that I had other people depending on me producing things as well, and I was always last minute. And I apologize to any of those who might be listening, because it might not be their style, right? And it just. But it was that type of masking. Well, the amount of time that it takes, but you're not honest about the amount of time that it takes, right? You're not saying you sat up until 3 o'clock in the morning doing it, because that would look like you didn't know what you were doing in your job. So you're like hiding that. So therefore it becomes a type of masking, because we're pretending that we don't need all of that time. And just to say in that context as well, it isn't necessarily that you need more time. It's probably more likely you needed a deadline, and you needed the quiet of the hours of 11 till 3 o'clock in the morning where your brain could actually connect, right? So, and all of that is masking, really, or pretending that when you walk into the office at 9 o'clock and you're like, hi, yeah, it's great to be here. But actually, you've been running for the last 20 minutes because you were so late and you don't want to say that you were running late or anything, because you get criticized for that a lot. Yeah, there's so many things that are masking, but what we don't appreciate about masking is what it costs. Like, it costs a lot just to keep up that pretense, which is, when we're talking about burnout in the workplace, it's why it's often so prevalent, because we kind of feel like we can't be ourselves. So it's really important that we can be ourselves everywhere, really, in workplace included. What I notice when I go to what I call neurotypical events, I might go to a conference that's run by a customer experience organization, for example. It always strikes me now, because I'm so used to going to neurodiversity events. And in neurodiverse events, people will sit on the floor, they'll go in and out of the conference room. There are captions on the slides or whatever is going on, on the screens and whatnot. There usually is a lot of screens and announcements, a lot of scaffolding. And then you go into like a normal event and everyone's sitting on a chair, facing forward, not moving. And it just hits me like, oh my God, I forgot this is what it's like. Jesus. But I don't conform anymore is the difference, right? And I would encourage anybody as well not to conform, just kind of go, well, what works for you? So I'll stand up, I'll move, and to ask for what you need. And
which, it's quite ironic really, isn't it? Because even during this podcast you were like, oh, I don't think I can sit still. And so we know that, if that would be so kind of trying to get you to sit still, or anyone to sit still when they don't feel that is not great. So, and even like, what you were saying about how we don't need to pretend. And this is what I love, because we're both neurodivergent adults and we know each other, we're comfortable with each other. So even though, you're my guest for the podcast, this morning I was going to be all ready and calm and have all my stuff put away in the car because I was leaving the hotel. And was I? No. I was like, came with all my stuff. I was still, trying to get ready. But I think that's the difference now, isn't it? That and I think obviously you're the same, that we feel comfortable and knowing that it's okay. And there's no shame around that anymore. It's like, okay, I had this idea that I would be ready, but time blindness again happened, and it's a real thing. So
it is a real thing. And you said shame as well. I mean, shame. People often say that, and I certainly had that when I got diagnosed. I got told straight away, and I walked out of that office, and I just remember all of this shame coming off, right? It literally felt like a weight coming off. And I didn't even know I had shame. Like, it's just really weird. But it is that distinction of, like, because shame is about who you are. I am bad, or I am late, and I am always like this, or I can't do that. It's identity first, essentially, right? That's shame. And when you get a diagnosis, or when you understand more about how you operate, because I don't, and not everybody has a diagnosis, and not everybody wants one, not everybody needs one. But when you understand more about how you work best, you can, it becomes sort of once removed. It's not I am like this. It's like things didn't really go to plan, right? That's once removed. It's not I'm screwed up. It's this got a bit screwed up.
Yeah, totally.
And once it's like once removed, if you can sort of see it and you can do stuff with that, and you can go, okay, I'm going to put that to one side now. But when it's shame and it's you, it just doesn't leave. And I think that's such an important definition to understand between shame and guilt. Like, we all feel guilt, and guilt can be okay, but because guilt is not about you as a person. It's about what you do. I say that to my kids. Maybe not. Well, I still do it, actually. They're much older now. But when they're saying, they're saying, oh, I'm a screw up, or this sort of thing. I was like, no, you just did a silly thing. You did a silly thing. You're not silly.
Yeah.
You know, you're not bad. You're a good person. Sometimes we just do silly things. And I think that you cannot stress that enough. Like, it's so important in all stages of life. I have to remind myself as well sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so do you think for you getting so you did get a diagnosis of ADHD?
Yeah, combined ADHD. And I probably have dyscalculia as well. I say I have dyscalculia, but it's undiagnosed. So
can you tell a bit more about, what that felt like with it? You said you didn't even know you were carrying that shame.
Yeah.
So can you explain a bit more what do you think that was about?
Yeah. I think my sort of diagnosis story is a little bit different because I was actually in a really good place. So I had done a lot of coaching, wasn't ADHD coaching at the time, although it turns out the lady who was coaching me too has ADHD and is now an ADHD coach. But and I'd done a lot of fitness, and I was just like in a good place where I kind of knew that mentally I'm all right, physically I'm okay. But then I'd find myself still at my desk in my 40s just going, I can't get myself to do this. I know what I need to do. I literally remember that moment, like just sitting there staring like that, just going, I know what I need to do. Why can't I do it? And I think I'd sort of run out of excuses, essentially. And I was an adult. Like, I couldn't sort of go, well, I'll learn it, or I'm sure it'll come to me once I mature or something. It's like, I'm a freaking adult and I just can't make myself do this. So that's when I kind of went off and looked for alternative, looked at options really, and decided to do an ADHD assessment because children and family, we had that in the family. And I think with then getting the diagnosis meant that distinction of like, a lot of people when they get diagnosed go, oh, that makes so much sense. And I think that shame kind of sits in, I think there is the shame kind of going away because it's not you anymore. It's not identity first language anymore. It's like, oh, there's this thing over here and it works like this. And I just need to learn how that works, which is why you're able to kind of put that shame to one side because it's not that anymore. It's not you, essentially. Yeah. It's this thing and I can work with this thing. I think that's what it is, and that's what it was for me.
I really relate to that myself, and I because I was diagnosed at 50 with ADHD, and I felt the same. I went around telling everybody, "Oh, I'm not a failure. I have this neurodiverse brain, and it's a neurological condition." And I really relate to what you said about just felt it kind of. It was almost like I'd been carrying this weight around with me, thinking there was something wrong with me my whole life. And like you said before, the shame, it was about who I was as a person, like a moral failing that I couldn't do the things that I said I was going to do. Or I was, just felt like I was letting people down and always wanting to try harder. But yeah, I think then there was this other layer though, because I think that was initially what happened. But then I think because the conditioning runs so deep with me, and I've seen it with some of my clients, I don't know if you see that sometimes that's not enough. As it's kind of, there's still these patterns that come up that still kind of like, I mean, it even happened the other day to me. I even did a podcast episode about it yesterday, about going to collect some pottery with my daughter on Christmas Eve, and when we got there it had been thrown away because I'd missed the deadline. And I felt that familiar shame come up, even though I know I'm an ADHD coach, I know there is no shame. It still kind of came up. So I feel like it is one of those things, there's so many layers to it. What do you think about that? Do you see that in your clients? Do you see that in yourself?
And I think this comes up a lot when you talk sort of around rejection sensitivity dysphoria, right? RSD, which is essentially emotional flooding management, or and I think, like with the pottery, and I had a similar thing as well. It's we've done it for so long that it is the automatic behavior, or it is the automatic kind of feeling. But the great thing is, though, you could probably pick up on that fairly quickly. It's like, yes, it feels that way, but I know, I don't know, I shouldn't feel that way, or, you know, there is an option here, whereas before you wouldn't have had that. And I think with that sort of automatic behavior, it isn't just going to go away in one fell swoop because we suddenly understand that there's this condition over here.
It's our nervous system, isn't it? Our nervous system is conditioned to have that response, which it sounds like that's what you're saying about RSD. Is that right? That it's a kind of a conditioned response?
Yeah. Well, particularly the reaction, like what we do with it, right? Like, because it sort of hits us, and then it's like what we then do with it it's all just an avalanche of stuff that happens, and it isn't going to go away in one fell swoop, but it doesn't mean that we can't work on it. But whenever I ask a client around RSD, like, how long has this been going on, I have yet to meet a client that says, oh, you know, maybe a few years. Like, everyone is just forever. I don't know when it didn't exist, or, you know, it's just always been there. So with that in mind, it's also not going to go away in one, you know, straight away, or in even a few coaching sessions. You need to understand it, which coaching sessions are great for, and then you just need to sort of chip away at it. And I'd say what you did with the pottery kind of thing is that when you realize what you've done and how you're feeling about it, you're able to chip away at it a bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, because now I know it means nothing about me.
Yeah.
That I couldn't find the receipt, that I had complete time blindness about when we did the pottery, that I, you know, and that fact that it was Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't mean anything about me.
No.
But this response still came up, that familiar feeling. But then, I can allow that feeling in my body and know, oh, that's okay. That doesn't, you know, even that, I'm not going to judge myself for having a feeling of shame come up in my body. It's just,
You don't have to. And I think you've had clients like this as well, where an RSD response would just go on for a week or more for some people, right? It just puts you in this spiral of shame, essentially. And that's when you understand yourself better, that's part of the chipping away. So I have then clients going, oh, it's shorter, and that's how we work on it, but it isn't going to be all in one go. Yeah,
and in a way, it doesn't have to, in a way, does it? As long as it's more like what you think about that, isn't it? It's like, if you know it might happen, but it doesn't mean anything. But actually, I was just going to say, for people that might not know what RSD is, is anyone listening, can you explain a bit more about what it is?
Yeah, I mean, so I said earlier, it's an overwhelm response, or it's an emotional flooding. I like to frame it like that because I don't think everyone can relate to RSD as it's defined, and I think it exists in most people in some shape or form. So it's just that overwhelming feeling and emotion that just feels uncontrollable. You just you just can't do anything about it, which is the trick. So I'm not saying you can't do anything about it, right? I'm saying that's the experience, is that you can't do anything about it. But actually, you need to just recognize what's actually going on and then start chipping away at it. And that's where having a coach can be really, really helpful. And it does have neuroscience to it as well. It does hijack your amygdala, where it just, which is meant to protect us and
it's like our little inner security guard, isn't it?
And when you look at, I won't go into the neuroscience because I can't rattle that off at the top of my head, but what I want people to understand is that there are all of these brain areas and brain circuits that gets triggered. So even because often when we deal with emotions, it feels like we should be able to control them, and like we should just kind of, and that's why I kind of want to reassure people that you have brain areas lighting up, you have brain circuits going around that basically makes it really, really difficult to control them. That's why it feels incontrollable, like you can't do anything about it. So, and I actually find for some clients as well that understanding a little bit of the neuroscience, depending on their kind of learning style and stuff, can be really helpful, because when they can sort of visualize it or understand a little bit more about what's going on, that's part of the process of kind of feeling less shame about it, because they can sort of...
It's a biological response.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So,
And so the word, the letters RSD stands for rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria.
Yeah.
So it's primarily rejection we're talking about here, isn't it? As not just all emotions, like feeling this.
Yeah.
So why do you think ADHDers are more prone to that feeling of rejection? Have you got any thoughts about that?
Well, firstly, I think we think very feelingly. So
we think very feelingly.
Yeah,
I love that.
I love that expression as well. And most people I've come across when I say that, it's like they can really relate.
Yeah,
right?
no,
Because
totally.
You process things in a very emotional way.
We're feeling creatures.
We are feeling creatures. And this is also where we get great intuition from as well, to be fair. So it's, so we think very feelingly, and it means that when you're sort of walking into a room or you're meeting people, most people tend to have sort of a heightened sense of like what's going on or what the atmosphere in the room is, and there's an ability to kind of read people and what have you. So I don't know if it's the right thing to say that we kind of overdo that, but we do a lot of scanning, right, of everything that's going on. So and we have everybody is negatively biased in their wiring, because
all humans.
All humans.
Yeah.
Because we needed to always scan for things that could go wrong to keep alive. So like that's how your brain's supposed to work. But when you've got ADHD, you have a heightened negativity bias, let's say, for lack of a better word.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, it comes from this that we get criticized a lot because we don't necessarily fit into how society should operate, and when even if you haven't had those comments, you can see as you're scanning that I'm not quite fitting in, or I have to change here, and you either change and mask or you don't, and then you feel it outside. So that's why that, like, it is that our negativity bias is just on steroids, basically.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good way to describe it, on steroids. Yeah, it's just heightened more than, like, as you say, all humans have a negativity bias. It's the way we're the evolution made us so we survive. And then but it's that heightened sense. And like when you going back to what you said, that most of your clients would always say, I've had it for as long as I can remember. So from childhood, I mean, I can never remember what the statistics are, but something like ADHD
it's
children
like 20,000 more negative comments.
Than neurotypical children. And that really makes sense, doesn't it? Because if they're constantly being told, why are you doing this? Why don't you try harder at this? Then they're always going to feel like they're coming at it, from a negative standpoint already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I try and combat that as much as I can in my children, but it's hard. They do it to themselves as well. Like we do it to ourselves as well. Like you do when you then don't pick up the pottery, right, and it's been thrown away. It's like, you tell yourself as well.
But then we only do that though because we've learnt that voice, from
they're very true.
society.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like
not
unlearning
okay.
it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unlearning that inner critic.
Yeah.
I'm just going to change tack slightly here
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I want to bring, because I know you've got
That's
so
your
much experience from in the workplace and helping people with the workplace. So I kind of want to ask you about some of those things. So I know that, you do help people when they're in some difficult situations at work.
Yeah.
And you really are that person that you've got that knowledge. And so what do you think, people, when they say they don't feel psychologically safe at work,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And how would you kind of help them or support them if they were telling you that they don't feel psychologically safe?
Yeah. So I'm probably going to say this again, but like having any issues at work is not a you problem, it's a context problem, right? It's the environment, not your capability. And I absolutely believe that. And psychological safety as an expression, I mean, I don't actually know what it's like in the outside world, but in organizations, psychologically safety gets bandied around a lot as a word. You're safe here, everyone can just be themselves and express themselves, and if you have any problems, come and talk to me, it stays between us, and that sort of thing. Lovely things to say, but if you don't live that, if you don't model that, and because essentially psychological safety is about how the people in your environment feel about the environment, right? It's not about what you say. You can be shouting that until the cows come home. If people don't feel it, and they don't, and they will only feel it if you're living it, if you're demonstrating it, if they can see that things don't go any further, and when they come to you and they share stuff with you, that gets, they feel heard and understood, and something, not always something has to come from it, but if you say you're going to do something, you do something, and it's kind of supported from the organization as a whole, only then are you really going to feel psychologically safe. And how we see that is very much around permission. So I always joke about the noise cancelling headphones, because it feels like when you're talking about accommodations in the workplace, people always talk about noise cancelling headphones, but let's use it. So if you are using noise cancelling headphones, psychological safety is about permission. So when you feel that you can put your noise cancelling headphones on without apologizing or explaining to everybody, or feel like you're sticking out, when you don't have to do all of that, that's psychological safety. Like you just fit in however you are. And I think I like to use the example as well of so as a parent, you've probably, you and I, and lots of other people would have gone around schools and looked at different schools and, where should we put our children? And they always talk about, because they have to, about how we adjust to every child, and every child's needs is the individual child first, and that sort of thing. How you see that in a classroom is very similar. If you go in and have a look around and you see children who have maybe different desks, and they have some different alternative uniform type things, or they have a special pen, or they have noise cancelling headphones for all I know, then that is inclusion, essentially, right? In action, because they're not, and school environments are a great example of this, because children don't necessarily like to stick out. So if they are operating in that way, then it's probably a very inclusive school. That's how you see the evidence of everything that they're saying. And most interviews in the workplace these days are online, but ideally, if there is an office or a workplace, go in and check it out. So people often ask me, like, how do I know if this place is going to be inclusive or not? And they might not want to say that they're neurodivergent. It's very much a personal choice, and you don't have to. And the way you do that, you go into the environment and see if you see evidence of it like that. Like, is everybody just operating in a way that seems to suit them. So examples of that is like taking whatever the company is publicizing in terms of policies, and they might have various different, inclusive policy, whatever it is. I'm not naming them specifically because actually all companies call them different things. And then just ask them specifically about that, and like, what does that look like? Are there employee resource group, like specialist groups, where those people meet, or like, do they encourage communities like that? Because the more you sort of ask about that, you'll quickly get a feel, especially with our heightened intuition, whether that is just lip service or they're just like, oh yeah, no, we have this group and they meet every Friday and it's great, and they come and present to the board and it's you can sort of figure out whether at least get a feel for. Obviously you'll never have the 100% answer, but you'll get a feel for how inclusive they are. Yeah. I've forgotten what original question was now, but yeah.
I've forgotten too. So which I can definitely, add into that though. I think that I know that a lot of people say to me they feel like asking for accommodations might be like seen as a burden, or they're a problem. And how do you, what would you say to that, to people that feel like they're a burden?
I love that question. I run this, I run a group for ADHD UK, the charity. It's on the first Tuesday of every month at 5 p.m. if you want to join. It's just ask me any questions you want about ADHD in the workplace, basically. So anyone can come. And I get questions around that. I might not get that exact question, but people often come and ask questions and like, how can I get my employer to do this, or how do I get accommodations? It might be a very generic question. And the underlying feeling is that, it's a burden. Like, how do I ask them for this very big favor? And it's just not like that. Like, you shouldn't have to feel like that. And actually, smart, clever employers will want to know how you work best, because they hired you. It costs a huge amount of money to hire people, which is why they should be interested in retaining you, because if you leave because you don't get what you need in order to work the way that you need to work, then it's just going to cost them more money. It is in their interest to keep you there. They should all be interested in like how you work best. Now, I appreciate, because I run those sessions, so I know that's not always the case. But that's where we come back to this whole idea as well, that it's not, it's about environment, not capability, right? It is because, and we see this all the time, you are the same person with the same brain. And in one workplace, you might be not doing very well, for lack of a better word. And then in another workplace, you're absolutely thriving. You're a superstar. Everyone loves you. Like, you just do amazing work. And so it's not you, right? It really is not you. And I see that all the time. And it is great evidence as well when I do have a client who's like really struggled, and then they've left and they've gone somewhere else and they're just flying, absolutely flying. Now, I'm not saying therefore everybody needs to change their job, right? And just because some people will say also, I job hop all the time. I can't stay anywhere. I'll just try. And I think then it comes down to more understanding yourself and what you actually need to work best. And then be able to communicate that, which is obviously the area that I work in a lot, both in coaching and in those sessions as well, to really, and I like that expression of coming back to how you work best, because it also doesn't have it also doesn't have that bit of like, do I have to tell them I have ADHD, for example? Now, it's completely up to you whether you tell them or not. Like, there is no right answer, wrong answer.
So there's no legal...
It's absolutely no legal requirement at all. And I think it is a very personal decision. about where you are in your personal journey and how you feel about your role and the company and everything, like stages of your life. So it is a very personal decision. Now, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, because it really is up to you.
Yeah.
And you've got to be ready for it as well. So if you're not, you want to do it. Most people feel like they do want to, but they might not be ready, and that's okay. Like I think most people I talk to will say like, oh, when I get my diagnosis, I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. And then they get the diagnosis and they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready yet. It's a whole vocabulary and stuff that I feel like you need to get used to as well and get comfortable with yourself. And you have every right to get comfortable with it yourself before starting talking to others. So, what
Well, I don't know, but I was just thinking that I always feel very privileged, actually, that because my very job is to, advocate for ADHD, to celebrate it, celebrate people that are neurodiverse, but I know that it's not always like that in the workplace. That people. So I always feel like you just said, it's really we're never gonna say to people, oh yeah, just like bring it all out, because if they don't feel that safety and they're not ready, like you say, then I would never, want to be that person that would, tell them that, oh yeah, just because I'm very lucky in the job that I'm in, because I work for myself, and it is, like I say, all
of us are fairly neurodivergent.
Literally what I do day in, day out is to celebrate ADHD and talk, and that's been my own journey. So yeah, I totally am with you on that one about that everyone's got to be ready, haven't they? And it isn't. We know that we live in the real world. It's not like we'd love it that everybody was really inclusive and there's no stigma. We know that isn't always the case.
No. And it's not that I don't advise on it either. Like, we're talking generically. So therefore, it is very personal choice. If somebody, if I have a client and we go into the intricacies of their environment and who they are and what they want to achieve and what have you, then, I might have some advice in terms of, it probably wouldn't be advice. I would ask certain things that allows them to gain clarity about what they want to do, because as coaches, that's kind of what we do. But the one thing I would say, and the one advice that I do give people, like when they sort of say, well, should I tell them, is ask yourself, what is it that you want them to know? It probably gives you more insight into what it is that you want people to know about you, and whether that's dependent on saying I have ADHD or not. It just gives you more options and more clarity around sort of if it's stuff that, because sometimes it's like we want people to know stuff about us in any sort of context, and this is just a new shiny thing that has happened to us. So is that why we want to share it? And by all means, like that's a reason to share it. But no, understanding that about yourself just gives you more kind of autonomy in terms of what you're telling, why you're telling, and how you tell it and whatnot. It probably took me about 3 months before I told anyone at work. I always knew I was going to. And then the other thing I actually say to people as well is like, start with the safe conversations where you're not going to be challenged. Like people who love you, who they might challenge, like they must ask questions. Like we have lots of examples of people telling their parents and they go, oh, I don't believe in that. Or, they're a different generation, what have you. But it's safe in the sense that, they still love you, they still love you, provided you feel that way, of course. But and that's what I mean with like the safe conversations, that even if you get questions and you kind of get challenged, you feel safe to kind of think to yourself about that question. Whereas people that we don't feel that way, we that's where we just become blank, right? Because we feel so challenged and everything just shuts down. So you want to have those first conversations with people where you're sort of safe, where you find your vocabulary and you kind of go, oh, actually that's a valid question, I haven't thought of that, and you give yourself some time to actually openly think about it. So yeah,
sort of like baby steps really
Yeah.
into that. Yeah, not
I
just
think so.
ta-da all at once, like
Yeah.
tell the world. Maybe just choose who
Well,
you're going to
each to their own. I think there are people who like the ta-da
I mean, I didn't do
approach.
that, to be fair. Yeah, but then
Did you?
again,
But then
I
you tend
did.
to go that
yeah,
you
it was. But I felt safe doing that in the environment I was in.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But not everybody does, like we said.
No,
Yeah.
and it's just a different approach. Like you do that, and then you tend to then work back and figure out the detail afterwards, kind of thing. I think there's validity to that too. But yeah, so it's just kind of checking in with yourself what works best for you first, and then go for it, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to just ask you, and I don't know if you've got any like good examples, but because I know you help people when they have maybe been treated unfairly in the workplace. Have you got any kind of like examples where, you know, somebody was being discriminated against by their employer, and if they, you know, had an outcome from that, and did you, and how you helped them?
Yeah, unfortunately I have, yes. It's not something I actively do, but if I have clients that I'm working with and we're having these issues, then of course we look at that. And I think the unfair treatment often comes from people who don't understand, basically, and often, unfortunately, they don't want to understand. It does also come from people saying things like, well, I have lots of ADHD in my family, so I understand it. And by saying that, they're almost like cutting that person off. It's like, you don't need to tell me anything. I'm not going to hear and listen to anything you got to say because I get this.
Yeah.
And that's not very helpful. And it's also where, I mean, I often see it as well with like managers who are not very confident in themselves. Most of it's unnecessary. I don't know any sort of conflict that should have happened for any reason. Like, it's just unnecessary stuff. Where I do the sort of facilitated conversations, as it were, it is mostly education that I do.
Right.
It's almost like a translator. So I normally, you know, there's a neurodivergent employee involved, and then there's a manager involved, and maybe HR or just the three of us. And it is like the employee is like, this is what's happening for me, and then I take that and translate that into work or like stuff that's got more context and explanation around it, so that they don't just get triggered. Like, a lot of those conversations are often triggering at that point, which is why they become these sort of facilitated conversations. So yeah, a lot of it is just translation and education, trying to get people to actually understand.
So you're like
how
that
it works.
kind of intermediary between the employer and the
mediator, some would call it as well. The mediator is what you'd call it in if you go into sort of a tribunal or a formal process, potentially.
Have you got to that stage? Have you helped people in tribunals and things?
Yeah, we've never gotten to tribunal, but certainly like formal processes. And I mean, I want to say this. This is why I say I don't actively do this, because you should, of course. The problem when there's conflict at work, most ADHDs have a really strong fairness and justice kind of standpoint, right? Which is good. It's good to have that. But when we then get treated unfairly, it gets massively triggered as well. So I might get into this kind of, I'm going to get them, or I'm going to show them, or it can't be like this, even if this is just me right now. They can't do this to people. Like, it is often a bigger picture thinking as well. Like, they can't be allowed to behave like this. Which, of course, I don't disagree with. But when I'm thinking of that individual in that situation, it's often also not helpful or healthy even sometimes to take on that fight. Because I have been to the tribunal, but when I was in corporate, and I have been through various different formal processes, it is awful for everyone involved. And it takes a long time. So when it starts, it starts with a very well-meaning crusade, for lack of a better word. But, all the reasons are very well-meaning and good-natured. But that doesn't mean that it's always a fight worth taking. Like, got to put yourself first.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, yeah, when I talk to people about that, we also consider, like, what is the right thing for you to do here. Most of those formal processes, even without tribunal, can be easily a year long. It's like, where do you want to be in a year and how do you want to feel? And
so it sounds like you're saying that you would rather sort it out before it gets to that stage.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what you see yourself maybe doing more, albeit that's more your role.
So rather than what I used to do a little bit of, like, sort of advocacy and supporting people in formal processes, I now do facilitated conversations, which is a lot more preventative. Basically, it's like, this is difficult. Why don't you let me help you there?
I love that.
So that you can work together. Because then, whereas advocacy, like, it's much more game playing, because it's processes that has to be followed. So everyone just takes different roles, which is a lot of what I explain to people in that process as well. No one's ever happy, even if you get lots of money. Happiness is not one of the things that you get from it.
No.
I haven't seen anyone getting happiness from it. Whereas facilitated conversations much more about, like, how do we continue to work together? It hasn't gotten to that stage yet. It's much more, education and understanding, which is just much more fun to see that nurture and grow for everyone involved. I'm not just saying I want to have fun all the time. Enjoy it, but
Yeah, I love how you explained that. Actually, it's really, I've seen that in a different light just from you explaining it, and how you see your role as more educating, like, especially the employers. So I think we're gonna, like, wrap things up a little bit, but I just, on that note, maybe what would you say to employers then, if you were, on that note of, like, educating them maybe, or about how they could be different maybe, or something you'd want them to know about when they have neurodiverse employees? Yeah,
I would say two things. I just need to try and remember both of them.
You can take your time.
So one is, like, accommodations, do not need to be expensive or time consuming. Both of those cost money, right? Anything that's time consuming or actual money. There are so many accommodations that you can provide or discuss or execute without any of that. And we talk about this, like, when we talk about neurodiversity friendly environments, it's not about being one way. It's not about providing noise cancelling headphones to everybody. It's about providing lots of different options, right? So, because we're not all the same. We all have different needs, and this is what the spectrum is about and whatnot. So it's being able to provide lots of different options for note-taking, for meetings, for working hours. Just look at all of the things you can do. And that's your library of accommodations, which I can help with as well. And the other thing is that there is absolute value in inclusivity, right? There is money to be made in inclusivity. The 20% of the workforce or the population is neurodiverse in some way or another. So you don't want to exclude 20% of the workforce, because that's really not a good move.
No.
Essentially, when you're inclusive, it leads to intrinsic motivation. So people themselves are motivated from the inside. And there is some statistic somewhere about motivated employees, it's like, I haven't got the right, it's like $8.9 trillion or something that it's costing the organizations every year in kind of not being inclusive and keeping a motivated workforce.
Wow, that's huge.
So there is money in it, right? Looking at it as a cost center is definitely not the way to look at it. If that's the way you look at it, a re-education needs to be had. Like, there is so much we can do.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's not one size fits all for what you're saying. Like, I like to say, if you've met one ADHD person, you've met one ADHD person.
Yeah.
It's like, I just think that you know, it's the, like you, I just think it's so funny when you said as if we would all just go out and get noise cancelling headphones.
All be okay.
Doesn't yeah. And so I love that it's all different, and it is just about accommodating for what they need, and then you're going to get the best out of your employees. You're going to get it's about, like you were saying before, that they're not a burden. That's actually, how do they work best? And if the employees can, and it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah.
Like you said, it can be something quite simple, but it just allows them to really just give their gifts. And as you know, my business is called Gifted with ADHD. So
allow them to give you their gifts. Absolutely.
Yeah, because they are really gifted, but maybe if they are not allowed to show those gifts because of, you know, the way they're being forced to work, maybe, you know, then they're not gonna be able to get the best out of their staff and their people.
You just need to be interested, really.
Yeah, to ask
interested
them.
and curious.
Yeah,
and
sometimes it's a learning curve for both people, isn't it? I have so many clients that say, "Oh, I don't even know what to ask for."
Yeah,
so
no,
do you get that a lot? Do you get that when
absolutely.
People...
Absolutely. Yeah. And I get that a lot in the group as well, where what do I even ask for? And often people think that they want like a list of things that they can ask for, but the place to start is understanding yourself, right? Because yes, you can get the list of things, like you watch the TikToks or read a book or a documentary, you get lots of ideas and tips, and people and books are full of tips and tricks and ideas of what you can do. But I often also get people going, I read all the books and I still don't know what to do. And I think that's often how I describe coaching, because it is like, okay, now what? What do I do? Because there's a lot of nuance to all of those strategies, and they're not all going to work for you. And what you get from coaching is understanding why something works for you as well. And then you really embed it differently, and you understand yourself, and then you can, as you then move forward in life, you see something else and you go, I know that'll work for me because I know this about me, and I know that won't work for me. I say this to people, like, it's like reading a self-help book. Like, after coaching and you understand yourself better and you read that self-help book, you're much more likely to be selective about, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to try a little bit of that, or a nuance and a version of that. Because whereas before that, we tend to just, because books needs to be marketed, so they usually have a framework and, like, this is it, and do this
worked for me, therefore it's gonna absolutely work for every single other person.
You just need to do it exactly like that. And that's what we're saying with ADHD is, right, there is no such
cookie
thing.
cutter solution.
So get to know thyself.
That is a good note to end on. There is no cookie cutter solution.
No.
And
there are lots of solutions, though, but
we wouldn't want there to be, by the sound of it. We are, that's the whole point, isn't it? We're all neurodiverse, and celebrate that diversity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Tina, thank you so much for coming in. And can I just ask, if people want to find you, because, I mean, you've got so much to offer.
Oh, yeah.
Where can they find you? Where's the best place?
So I am on LinkedIn as Tina Squire. I also have a website. So my company is called Adeptina with an E.
Adeptina.
Adeptina. So I'm on adeptina.com, and I've got lots of resources there as well. So I have an ebook called How to Thrive with ADHD in the Workplace that you can download for free. And And as people are asking me all of these questions about accommodations and various, I tend to create resources. So there's lots of other resources on there as well that might be helpful. So do go and have a look.
Well, we'll put it all on the show notes. So thank you again for coming in. And
Thank you so much for having me.